Good evening. Welcome to my podcast entitled The Wright Experience. I'm Dr. William T. Wright, Jr., the founder and host of this show. During the past 23 years or so as a professional educator, I've been fortunate enough to get to know some amazing leaders all across the Eastern United States and throughout the nation as a whole. The vision of this show is to share these podcasts with you so we can learn from people who are leading others every day. Our initial focus will be on educational leaders. We'll look at expanding to other disciplines down the road. When you hear something you like, please drop us a comment, click like, or if you're viewing us via YouTube, please don't forget to click that subscribe button. That certainly helps us out as we continue on. Tonight is episode number 6 of The Wright Experience. I'm fortunate enough to have secured another outstanding guest yet again. I met this gentleman upon my return to North Carolina to assume my superintendency in Hertford County Schools over 5 years ago. He is a great example of what a leader should be and possesses a wealth of knowledge that he'll share with us tonight. My guest is Mr. Jack Hoke, and Jack is the Executive Director of the North Carolina School Superintendents Association. He currently serves in that role. He retired in April 2012 after serving 12 years as superintendent of the Alexander County Schools in Taylorsville, North Carolina. He also served as an associate superintendent for 2 years in that same district. He served as a principal at the elementary, middle, and high school levels in the Caldwell County Schools and served for 32 years total as a school administrator. He also served as a superintendent advisor to the North Carolina State Board of Education from 2009 to 2011 and was appointed by the governor to serve on the Professional Teaching Standards Commission from 2006 until 2010. He was involved in the development of the teacher, principal, and superintendent standards for the state of North Carolina and assisted in the development of the North Carolina Education Evaluation System. His district in Alexander County, North Carolina, was selected to pilot the teacher and principal evaluation systems and implemented both systems during the first year. As executive director of the North Carolina School Superintendents Association, he has designed and conducted the following professional development programs for superintendents and associate and assistant superintendents: Next Generation Superintendents Development Program, the Aspiring Superintendents Program, the Digital Leadership Institute for Superintendents, Future Focused Schools, Emerging Schools Trends Network for North Carolina school districts, and the North Carolina District Leaders Institute, which provides executive coaching for new superintendents. Additionally, he's received awards and recognition from the Alexander County Schools Award of Honor in 2017, the Caldwell County Schools Education Hall of Honor Award 2017, the Order of the Longleaf Pine in 2012, the Northwest RESA Superintendent of the Year, both in 2006 and 2011, the NCASA Raymond Sarbaugh State Leadership Award in 2010, and the NCHSAA Superintendent of the Year Award in 2007. So you see, once again, I have an outstanding guest. It is my great honor to have tonight Mr. Jack Hoke. Welcome to The Wright Experience, Mr. Hoke.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. I'm certainly excited. I have followed your previous 5, and I always look forward to that popping up on my Twitter account. So I have the opportunity to hear you, but also hear the great guests you've had on, especially the superintendents that you've had on and the experiences they've had.
We certainly have been fortunate. This show has really done well. I've been very pleased with the responses I've gotten so far, and I do have had and will continue to have some very awesome guests. And certainly, we're just honored to have you here tonight. Want to start off, if I might. We'll get right into the questions. There's so many I could ask, but talk to us a little bit about the work that you do now as executive director of NCSSA and what that entails. And we heard a lot of it in your bio, but some of the additional things that you do. There are many things that you do to serve us.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. I will say this. I had the opportunity in 2006 to attend a superintendent development program with Dr. Brad Sneeden when he was at PEP. and we were with 25 superintendents over about an 18-month cohort. Bill Harrison's, Rodney Shotwell's, Shirley Prince, just who's who of superintendents. And then the PEP program went away, and I saw there was a void for superintendency, and I served as president of the NCSSA for 3 consecutive years. And when the job came open, my number one goal was to provide professional development opportunities for superintendents. And since 2012, I've been in the role a little over 9 years, worked with Bill Daggett from the center, his leadership center in New York, and we developed the next generation superintendent development program. The first year it was about 6 days, and I found that was too much for superintendents. So it's evolved, and this past year, William, we had 53 superintendents from across the state beginning. Ethan Linker's attended the last 6 years. He will soon be the longest serving superintendent in the state in North Carolina experience. And what we do now, we come in on a Wednesday at noon and leave about Thursday at 1, and do let them sleep about 4 hours. So what we've done, we've broken it up. We do 12 hours of pure leadership development, bring in the Bill Daggetts, the Ray McNulty's. Larry Coble's doing a lot of the work with us now when he was at the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro. We do 12 hours of technical skills and survival skills. And each year, the state superintendent of the year, this past year, Tony Jackson, did an hour-and-a-half session on superintendent board relations. And obviously that's critical to the success of the superintendent is the board relationships. And then I have various thought leaders in the program. There's 4 that serve, and they do presentations. So I try to get sitting superintendents to do 12 hours of technical skills and survival skills. And then every Wednesday for an hour and a half, we have a thought partner with about 15 superintendents, and they have about an hour and a half, just Q&A, whatever's on their minds. And so this year we ended up going virtual for the second and third session, and we found something that's going to improve the program. So we ended up with 9 breakout groups with a group leader and 6 superintendents. And every time we had a session, I told the presenters 20 minutes and then let them go to the group and talk. So that was a real powerful thing. They got to know those 6, build relationships, and really bonded. So again, that's come out of COVID, a better way to do the program. So we're real excited about doing that. I already have about 45 of the ones from last year have already indicated they will come back. I redo the program every year. We don't do any of the same sessions. We bring in different speakers. So that's been a great opportunity for superintendents. We've completed 8 years, and about 350 folks have been through the program over those periods of time. What I have found, we have great presenters, and that's outstanding. We partner with the Borough's Welcome Fund. They provide a grant, and Dr. Sam Houston, and they've hosted us till this year because of COVID. And that's a great facility and get treated first class as superintendents deserve. So it's what I have found, as good as the presenters are, the opportunity to network and have the conversations, or how are you doing this, especially during this COVID year. We just had a session in late March on social and emotional learning from RTI International, probably one of the most powerful sessions I've been involved with in the 9 years of doing this. It lasted an hour and a half, and they do about a 20-minute talk, and then they had specific questions in the breakout group, and we did a Padlet. So it was an outstanding opportunity for those superintendents. We recorded everything and sent it out. So we had a great year. The first session we did face-to-face, and then the restrictions got tighter. We did the last 2 sessions virtual. So they have 6 days of face-to-face or virtual, and it's been a great opportunity for our superintendents.
And it is the guests that you've been able to get for us have been outstanding. Like you said, from Dr. Daggett to our own fellow superintendents who have been in the business a while. It's always really beneficial. And of course, the opportunity to just share stories, and we call them war stories, is just immense. And so we are always very appreciative of those opportunities that you provide for us. And thank you for that. My next question to you, the superintendency, you have your hands on the pulse of the superintendency, obviously serving our 115 school districts. But you retired from the day-to-day of the superintendency itself in 2012. So what's changed or what's different about the superintendency now, in your opinion, as opposed to 2012?
Well, there's a lot of things, William, and I've been fortunate to stay very connected to our 115 superintendents. I tell them my job description is 24/8 because 8 days a week I feel like I'm on call. And again, superintendents, when they're calling me, they're usually not calling to chit chat. They've got a question or just need to vent a little bit and some of the frustrations and talk, but also get advice. And if I don't have the answer, and especially with all the COVID stuff and the resources that are coming in the ESSER, I can refer them to people that I know are doing a great job. And what's really helped me stay connected, William, is our executive board. There's 2 members from each region selected for 2-year terms. Regions 1, 3, 5, and 7 in the odd years, 2, 4, 6, and 8 in the even years. And so we meet monthly. And so that's really helped me stay connected. And what I've seen, when I left the superintendency in 2012, I had the opportunity to serve 12 years, had a great relationship with my board. Had a number of superintendents. There was probably 20 plus superintendents that had 20 or more years in the superintendency. As I look at the superintendency now, we've got about 12 that have more than 10 years. So the longevity of the superintendency certainly has changed dramatically. I've also seen we've got about 42 or 43 boards of education in the state that are now partisan. And again, that has changed since 2012. And then with what's happened with COVID, it's just created a tremendous amount of issues. What I've seen, especially during the COVID, it's created a system that's very stressed. Superintendents are owning decisions, and they're making decisions about equity and providing resources during the school closure, but also as schools open. And superintendents and boards of education have been in this together, and there hadn't been a lot of great options because most of the time when the superintendent makes a recommendation, the board approves, you're going to typically please 80 to 85% of your stakeholders, maybe 90. That's just about the opposite now with what the governor's orders were for opening schools, 50% capacity or remote, and then later on in November going to Plan A for K-5. Any decision you made, you had a group of parents that didn't want to be back or wanted to be back. You had teachers that were afraid and a lot of unknowns. So again, you've not had a lot of great decisions to offer the board, and that's created a lot of stressful situations for superintendent, between superintendent board in the community, superintendent board, and other educators. So it's been very challenging. And I see superintendents now with the pressure to kind of reinvent schooling, but still need to keep the current system going. And that's a lot of pressure. And I hope when COVID's over, we don't go back to the way it was, because hopefully we've learned a lot of lessons, especially around remote teaching and learning and technology. And just like the lessons we've learned with our virtual professional development, we're going to be able to make it better with lessons learned. Obviously, superintendents have had to have a tremendous focus on technology, staffing of classrooms, dealing with athletics, the buses, sanitations at a greater level than they've ever had to do. And again, you've got to provide a safe environment for the faculty and staff, the students, and you've got mom and dad want to know when their children are coming to school, it's a safe environment. And that's been a real challenge. We had been working to a lot of districts one-on-one prior to the pandemic, but I'm not sure a lot of districts had done the remote learning like we're had to do starting last March and still continuing up till this March. So again, the resources have really created, the technology's created a lot of challenges. A lot of districts have developed their own virtual schools and doing a lot of hybrid teaching, some online, some in person. It's created a real challenge for teachers, a lot of stress with teachers and with parents. And so it's been real challenging. Obviously, the inequities have become more visible with the pandemic around race, disability, income, lack of technology, lack of broadband. And broadband, to me, should be like a utility, and that's a state and national issue. It impacts us, but we've all got to work together to increase the broadband so all children have access to what they deserve. Right now, we're focusing on the learning loss, and I would say this. yes, there has been some learning loss because we had some kids that weren't connected, and again, no fault of their own. But I think children have learned a lot of valuable lessons, resiliency, getting along in a tough environment. And I do think we'll take some good things with us because everything that kids have learned is not on that one end of grade or end of course test. So I think our testing and assessment will show up that we've got to improve that system. And the state superintendent, Catherine Truitt, is certainly that's high on her radar. And we've had a lot of conversation because I don't think we're adequately measuring what students are learning. I don't think our current system is fair to our teachers, our principals, or our communities. And I think the pandemic has absolutely brought that to the forefront. And funds for capital school projects, ventilation systems, spaces for lunchroom. Again, those have taken on different dynamics. We got a significant amount of money with ESSER 2 funds. A lot of it's been obligated for us in terms of the summer school, 6 weeks, pay for it out of that. The ESSER 3 money looks like there's some possibility there, but we still don't have it, and it may be sometimes late April before that is turned loose. So again, a lot of challenges, and I think COVID has really magnified a lot of the inequities that we knew were there, but had not always done what we needed to about it. I think we're going to address that a lot better going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of governmental influence, there seems to be more of that now than there was in years past. How do we continue to make sure, you've talked about a little bit of this already, but how do we continue to make sure that the needs of students and staff are met with this changing climate where it seems to be that there's more, I guess I would say, influence in day-to-day operation of school districts?
Well, as an organization and as superintendents, we've got to continue to advocate for our students. That's what we're in the business to do, provide great education, great educational opportunities for our students. And we've got to work with the folks in power, Senator Berger, Speaker Moore. They want what's good for education. They may have a different theory about what's good than we do. So we've got to continually have conversation, and we try to make those headways. Certainly with Catherine Truitt being the state superintendent, we're having a lot of those conversations because the legislator develops the policy, the laws, and then DPI has to implement. And I think we've been in the conversation more since the last election than we have been in a long time in terms of at least having some potential to influence policy before it happens. And I think if we work together with our legislators and they will allow us to share our thoughts on what they want to accomplish, I think we can accomplish what they want to. But the folks that have to do the day-to-day operations know what they're proposing. We could do it a different way and get the same results. So I think the more conversation we have and advocacy with our leadership in the General Assembly and the governor's office, I think the better it will be for the students in North Carolina.
And I'm already starting to see some of that, and I appreciate the work that I know you are doing, as well as the folks at DPI, particularly behind the scenes, to make sure that our voices are heard. So that's a tremendous benefit to us, because we do know, because we're here every day, sometimes some different approaches to being able to solve problems. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing, collaborating with state superintendent and her staff and everybody to make sure that our voices are heard.
I would say this, William, with the state superintendent, she's hired an all-star staff with Dr. Robert Taylor, Dr. Catherine Edmonds, Dr. Derek Jordan, Dr. David Stegall's there, and Dr. Bev Emery. 4 of the 5 have been on our board. 3 of them were on our board when they were hired. So they understand what it's like in the field, and hopefully having those 5 folks around the table with the state superintendent, they will start seeing the perspective on what the impact of the laws and or policies from DPI on implementing the laws, how we can better do those, how we can make that better for our students and our staffs.
Agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that in your role, you give advice to all of us, sitting superintendents, aspiring superintendents. But we have some people out here that might still be in the classroom or might be newly minted assistant principals or what have you. So what advice or tips would you give to those who aspire to grow in leadership?
William, I would say this. I think a great example of a program that I think we have grown is the Aspiring Superintendents program. We've been doing that 5 years, and I kind of developed that one based on our model with Daggett, and we tweaked it and made it fit us again, where we do the 12 hours of pure leadership development, 12 hours of technical skills, the thought leaders. And from that program, we currently have 22 sitting superintendents that have graduated from that program. And we've got 2 in cohort 5 that we just graduated 2 weeks ago. So what we talk about in that program is, number one, you've got to know yourself before you can lead others. When we do the pure leadership development, you need to know your strengths. You need to know your weaknesses. You need to know what lens you come from. You need to know where your weaknesses are. So when you put a staff together, I'm not real good in this area, and you hire somebody with you. And from that, once you know yourself, then you build a team. You got to develop relationships first and foremost with the board, because in order for a superintendent to be successful, if you don't have the great superintendent board relation, you can have the best C&I person, the best facilities. But if the board and the superintendent aren't on the same page, things aren't going to happen. So you got to develop the relationship with the board. You've got to be visible in the community. You've got to listen to stakeholders, not only seek their input, but use that input. And then you've got to hire folks that complement you. And then you've got to develop their capacity. And I would say this, one of the things that I see the downfall in some superintendents, they start micromanaging. And for example, if they came from the assistant superintendent or associate superintendent C&I, they want to stay deep into the C&I, and they can't do that and manage the board relationship, the county commissioners, the DPI contacts, the legislative contacts, the community. You've got to trust your team. You need to kind of be more of a generalist and have an idea about the personnel. You need to have a good knowledge of finance. You need to have a good knowledge of the operations, the buses, the maintenance, the school lunches. All those are so critical. And again, you don't have to be an expert in those, but you need to know, and you need to hire people that are, and then continually have those conversations with them. And then you've got to continue to take care of your own professional development. What happens, as I see assistant, associate superintendents, and superintendents, you get that job, you take care of everybody else, you provide professional development for your teachers, for your assistant principals, your principals, but you don't take time to do that. That's why I think the Next Generation program is so valuable. Those 6 days where you can talk to folks that are same role, and if you look around in your district, you're the only superintendent. Sometimes folks that aren't in that chair don't understand the issues you're going through. So you develop a statewide network through the programs we have, so that you can call an Ethan Linker, you can call a Rob Jackson, you can call a Barry Williams, Dr. Barry Williams, and ask how they're doing it in Gates County, in Pitt County, and Carteret County. Those are so valuable for a superintendent to have those kind of contacts. And then you have to continually work on continuous improvement. Make sure you've got strong folks in technology, that you're able to do the remote pretty quick, and continue to grow and build capacity in your folks.
We had, speaking of technology, we were able to get up with our remote learning about as quick as anybody, and hats off to our technology staff. So I certainly know, and those relationships and those, because as superintendents, we're going to have to call on somebody at some point to help navigate. And so those programs, your Next Generation and so forth, they are very invaluable to those of us in the superintendency, because that learning doesn't stop even after you get to this level. In fact, I think the learning increases at that point. Sure.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay. Okay. You be the first one to do that. Okay.
You went through the Next Generation. What was impactful for you as a participant?
Well, the ability to be able to get away, get away, and focus on me as a learning leader was invaluable. To be able to network, but also having a larger circle of people that you could have conversation with after it was over, and even my time on the executive board, Jack, for those 2 years, being able to work with guys out in the western part of the state who, their demographics may be different than mine, but the challenges are somewhat the same, and having those relationships formed, in addition to the invaluable, you can get a lot of learning out of a book, but the invaluable experiences that we were able to share with each other, as well as learn from. And then, as you said, just being taken care of, having good sponsors that, would help you with the various things that we needed to have a successful conference was also very valuable to me.
All right, now I've got another question for you. You started
Okay.
the superintendency about 10 years. You've been in about 10 years. And so what has changed, because you're still in the seat, so what has changed from when you started the superintendency to today, and kind of see if that matches what I'm seeing close up, but still not in the seat?
My audience is probably loving this. The biggest thing that I think has changed is the erosion, if you will, of respect for education in general. I think that over time, there's been a shift in the way people view us as educators. And I think COVID is actually going to kind of flip that back around a little bit, to be honest with you, Jack. I think for us now, people understand the value of teaching again, and the fact that teachers are desperately needed and so forth. And I'm hoping that that's going to help us moving forward. I also think that the infusion of technology, we kept talking about technology and we need to infuse it, and some people did it at varying levels. But recently, with COVID and us having to flip to remote learning and so forth, I think that's opened our eyes up that technology is certainly a tool that we need to embrace and continue to move forward. I also think that rural districts, because all the districts I've served in as superintendent have been high poverty rural districts. And so I think the attention has now come full circle, where we've been saying all along, for instance, that our students did not have adequate internet access. Our students didn't have access materials as they should have. And for years, people heard that and said, oh, okay, oh, well. Well, now I think we're finally getting some attention to that hopefully will transition into our students and our staff getting the support and help that they need. And from the superintendency standpoint, I think it has been interesting to me to see the shift from, as you said, a lot of veteran leaders, and over the past few years, there's a constant change in the longevity of the superintendency. I mean, here I am at 5.5 years in Hertford County, and I'm way up in terms of seniority for the region, and probably about halfway the state with 5.5 years. And part of the reason why I think that is people do not understand the position and the role and the challenges of it. With the exception of the NCSSA, there are not a lot of supports for us, and that certainly needs to increase.
Outstanding.
All right, you got me. You're the first person to ask me a question on my show, but that's good. That's all right. So let me get back to you. So you talked a little bit about this already, but as public schools move forward, how do you see them changing, and how should we best prepare for those changes?
Well, I think that the changes are going to be evolving with the technology. I can see a number of districts going to having permanent virtual schools, and there'll be some parents that love that and students that love that. So that may cut down on the brick and mortar at some point, the needs around some facilities. And I just think that's going to change the way we view education. But I also see that as an opportunity to reach more folks and provide more choices and options, because I still think the best choice is the public schools, and we want to keep the market share up. We're about 75% now, and the more options we offer our parents, the better chance we have to continue to do that. And I will say this, it's incumbent upon the superintendent, the Board of Education, to reach out and to see what the needs of the community is they serve and try to meet those needs. We can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing because we're going to get the same results. Hopefully, we're going to come up with a new assessment system and accountability system that will be more, that'll cover a lot of areas and will be fair for the students and the staff. And I'm excited about that. And again, we got to look at educating the whole child, the social and emotional needs. We got to make sure we're providing an equitable education for all students. And so I see a lot of lessons learned in COVID that can really make education better going forward.
Right. So as superintendents, we talk about this all the time. You may or may not know this. You probably do. But we see that you spend a lot of time helping us promote the things that are going on in our districts through your retweets and so forth. And so why is that so important to you? I notice that you do that with a religious fervor almost. So.
Well, being no longer in the superintendency, I tweet from 3 to 5 in the morning and then 8 to 10 at night, 4 hours a day. And I'll tell you how I got started. 6 years ago, we had a program that Bill Daggett was leading. I think it was the Emerging Trends. And Heather Mullins, who's the chief academic officer in Newton, and Rob Jackson were in the program. And so they showed me how to do Twitter. And, you know, I'm pretty old school. I was 60 years old when I started this job. And so I started, and the first tweet, I was going to San Diego for AASA, and I was in the Charlotte airport, and Bill Harrison just got appointed in Burlington Alamance, and I did my first tweet and hit send, and I about lost my breath. But then once I started doing that, William, I'm going to tell you what, I learned more about individual districts, about education. The reach is unbelievable. I've sent over 60,000 tweets out in the last 6 years, about 4,000 followers. And there's just so much educational knowledge. And the only time I've been disappointed with Twitter when they went from 140 characters to 280, because if you can't say it in 140 characters, I'm not sure you need to say it. But the reach, and Bill and Ray McNulty, regardless of what state they're in, somebody will ask them something about me because of the Twitter presence. And we do a session on that in every program we have about branding your school and yourself. And again, if we're not promoting us, somebody's going to tell our story. Why not us tell the story? And I think we do that well. We've got some superintendents that are phenomenal, a lot of superintendents that are phenomenal around the social media presence. And there's just a wealth of knowledge out there that you can get rather quickly. And again, you can do a lot of retweeting, and you don't have to do your own tweets a whole lot to get your stuff out there.
Right. Well, we appreciate that. I know every time I see that you retweeted one of our happenings here in Hertford, I'm greatly appreciative of it. And also I can keep up with my colleagues all across the state. So thank you for providing that service for us. My very last question for you. You've been in the current role for 9 years, almost 10, and served as superintendent for 12 years. So what would you say is your proudest moment or proudest achievement, or maybe even if you got a couple that you want to share with us?
Well, obviously the professional development that we've been able to provide superintendents, but I tell you what I'm the most proud of that's happened in the last 2 years. I applied for a grant from Z. Smith Reynolds for executive coaching and got a 1-year grant. And because it's such a challenging and such a tough job. So I wrote a grant and got funded for 20 superintendents to have an executive coach for a year, and then resubmitted the grant and ended up getting a second year. So what we're able to do is, with that grant, is provide 20 superintendents with an executive coach. And when we started, they were getting a quarterly face-to-face meeting. The executive coach would go spend a half a day with them, and they were doing 2 a day. And I had some great retired superintendents in that role, and Dr. Tony Jackson and Dr. Patrick Miller as state superintendents are also serving in that role. So when we got to COVID, then we started doing twice a month Zoom meetings, and their coaches available just like I am, 24/8, text, email, phone calls. And so in order to be in the program, they have to agree to be in the next generation program, which is 6 days of face-to-face. And then the executive coaches, and again, when we were doing 4 of those, so we were getting to spend about 10 days with those. And I wrote another grant and received one from the John M. Belt Endowment for another 3-year period. So for about the next 4 or 5 years, every superintendent that's hired has the opportunity to have an executive coach, an experienced superintendent, and like Dr. Ron Hargrave and Dr. Lori Morrow have just retired. They'll be starting working in that role. And so I'm as proud of that as anything that I've done. We've got 35 in the program now, and we'll already up to about 8 next year with the number, or 8 have the potential to be in there with the number of interims that we currently have. Right. And to me, we're 35 for 35, all still gainfully employed. And then I'm also working with RTI International because we're working on a body of research. If we can do this for 5 years, we believe, and there's not a lot of research out there to back this up, that superintendent longevity is real important. And when you've got a superintendent in a district for a number of years and you don't have the continual turnover that we've had in some districts, we think the turnover rate among teachers will be better, principals will be better, because you've got that continuity, because every time there's a change, somebody brings in a program they want to do. And so we just feel like that the longevity of the superintendent and getting the appropriate professional development from themselves can make a big difference. When you have that stability at the top, then you got stability at the principal, assistant principal, and hopefully at the teacher level. And that's one thing we're really working on with RTI. Our coaches meet with them on a quarterly basis. We share success stories. We don't use names, and challenges. And then we continually try to improve. And we'll also have the opportunity to be working with some Leandro districts for executive coaching for their leadership team through a situation with the State Board of Education with the North Carolina Alliance for School Leadership Development, which is our 501c3 that our grants go through. And we're real excited about that work. But providing that support with somebody they can talk to any time of the day or night that has just recently been in those shoes. And Ron Hargrave and Lori Morrow served during the pandemic. So they're getting the best advice. And you've got Ed Kroom working, Dr. Ed Kroom working, and Dr. Patrick Miller and Dr. Tony Jackson. That's top shelf.
Right. Outstanding. And we so desperately need those as a new superintendent, although I think it was 2013, actually, when I started as superintendent down in South Carolina. Were it not for some of the professional development that you're talking about, people checking on you, people helping you solve problems, people teaching you how to work through board situations, just whatever you have going on. That is the way that you survive. And so we certainly appreciate your efforts to do all of that. All of the above is so desperately needed. Hold on for me for a minute, if you will, and I'll have you come right back to close out. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for, as you can see, another outstanding guest. I jumped at the opportunity to have Mr. Hoke aboard for my show, and I think you all can see why. My next podcast will air on next Thursday, April 15th at 7:00 p.m. My guest will be Dr. J.R. Green, who is the superintendent of Fairfield County Schools in South Carolina. Dr. Green is also the 2021 South Carolina Superintendent of the Year. So we're certainly looking forward to having him next week as well. Mr. Hoke, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest tonight. I certainly appreciate your willingness to be aboard the Wright Experience. And on a personal note, I just want to thank you and have the opportunity to do that. Although I'm just one of 115, every single time that I call you, every single time I send you an email, whether I'm complaining or not, you always treat me like I'm one. And I think all of the superintendents feel the same way. And certainly hats off to you for the work that you do on a daily basis. That 24/8 that you spoke of, I know that to be true because I probably called you sometimes at hour 21, 22, or 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And you're always there for us. There's no question about that. And so we certainly appreciate you and the work that you do for us on a daily basis.
Dr. Wright, thank you so much for those kind words. I would like to say this. I think this podcast is outstanding, not just because I was on it, but what you're doing to share leadership from a lot of different perspectives. I'm glad you're bringing in someone from South Carolina. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed having you on the NCSSA Executive Board. I appreciate your leadership, but I also appreciate the leadership of all 115 superintendents who make a difference every day for the 1.5 million children in the state of North Carolina and for the 115 communities we serve. And in partnership with the Board of Education, we're going to continue to make a difference for every child in the state of North Carolina. Thank you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, and thank you all for watching the Wright Experience.